So here it is, the army itself in all of its glory, if you will. It's laid out on the table here. This is about 2,200, 2,300-ish points of Space Wolves. Actually, it's more like 2,400. With a couple of my ultramarines that I have just started recently, so there's not many of them. You might recognize the tank if you saw some of my earlier content that I don't think is uploaded anymore. Otherwise, let's get into it. So we have some shaky cam footage of our HQ units here, some of them kit bash, some of them out of the box, such as Ragnar. We have 3 packs of intercessors with their wolf pack leaders. These guys were a blast to paint. We have some Terminators here, kit bashed Arjak Rockfist with some Atlan Forge printed Terminators. We've got a printed Knight, a Repulsor. The Tech Marine here is a print. We've got 2 Dreadnoughts here, some Thunderbear Cavalry with some Outriders, Eradicators, and a Kit Bash Chaplain on bike. Aggressors, Blade Guard, Justiciar, Ancient, all over here. We have my Hounds of Mordecai, that again is another video on this channel, followed by the Ultramarine side of things. So we have an Ultramarine Knight that again I printed as well. We got my Eliminators and the Hellblaster, which was my most recent video. Not the Hellblaster, the Infernus Marine. Starting off with the HQs though, we have Ragnar Blackmane himself. This is basically one of my first proper character minis I've ever painted. I think Shadow Sun was my first character, but this, what I mean by that is, this was the first character I sat down and did a really good paint job on. I think he looks fantastic. I have swapped out one of his shoulder pads for a 3D printed shoulder pad that has some runes engraved into it, which I think gives, just my Ragnar a little bit of uniqueness that makes him uniquely mine. Really love this mini. It was a blast to build. I can't wait for more Space Wolves Primaris kits to come out, especially Skyclaws or Skyclaws specifically, but Assault Terminators would be great too. Next for character units, we have Arjak Rockfist or a generic Terminator Captain. Depends on how I want to play him, but I built this guy using the Leviathan box set's Terminator Captain, some 3D printed bits. The shoulders are 3D printed bits from Atlan Forge, including the hammer. I used some green stuff to create a purity seal to kind of hide the seam between the hilt of the sword and where the hammer connected. I also did some green stuff work and created that runic F symbol on his leg. The tilt shield is from a Knight kit, and the anvil is from the purple site. It's printed. It's just a really tiny anvil. There's nothing special about that. One of my best faces I've ever printed as well is on this mini. It's also a 3D printed face, but I love kit bashing, and I love how this miniature turned out. It looks so good on the tabletop and in my display shelf. Another character here, also a kit bash, is my my chaplain on Jet Bike, which would be a rune priest on Jet Bike for the wolves. Basically, I used some Piper makes, some Atlan Forge, some old Marine wolf kits, and the Primaris Outrider kit to build this miniature up. I also experimented with doing a purely dry brush paint style on this. Everything was base coated black, and then I dry brushed the whites. I dry brushed 90% of this miniature, the blues, as much as the yellows as I could. You can see some things are just traditionally painted. I was just, learning how to paint differently. And I think if I was to build another Space Wolves force, I would probably go ahead with this dry brush style, because I just like how it looks. Next up is my band of holy men, as I call them. We have the Justiciar and the Chaplain from the Indomitus box set, and the Ancient and the Blade Guard Captain there. So we have the 4 characters from the Indomitus box set. These were, there's some pretty good miniatures I painted. I don't like the black ones just because painting black is weird, and I don't think I did a great job, but Again, these were a lot of the first miniatures I painted when getting back into the hobby after a slight lapse. And I love every single one of them, including the captain. They're all edge highlighted, recess shaded. I really enjoy the ice effect I went for on these guys' blades. I carried that throughout my entire army. I think these are great minis, even though I don't use them too often because they don't serve me the most benefit. The captain and the ancient are almost always used. The other two, I rarely ever put in my list, if I'm honest with you. Now we have some more HQ/characters here. So we have a librarian in Phobos armor. We have my custom lieutenant that I kit bashed on. That was from the Imperium magazine. So I sculpted the fur and I built the power axe out of the power sword, out of multiple bits from older kits. So I'm really quite pleased with how he turned out. The Tech Marine there is mostly 3D printed. The helmet is from an Assault Intercessor kit, but other than that, that's a 3D print from Atlan Forge. And then finally we have the Blade Guard Lieutenant. I think this was an anniversary store model. So it's just a lieutenant with a shield. I don't think it's a Blade Guard one specifically. But I use him as lieutenant or a stand-in Blade Guard, depending on what I need, when I need it. Next up, I have 3 squads of 6 Assault Intercessors. 6 because it's a minimum squad of 5, and then I've attached the Wolfpack leader onto them. I play them as a group of 5 or a group of 6, depending on what I need or what I'm feeling is needed in my list. These were some of the first miniatures I really started doing to what I'd call a parade level. What Citadel lists as parade level painting. I learned a lot doing these edge highlighting. These were the first miniatures I really ever edged highlighted or recess shaded. I did the lens effects on the eyes for the first time, which I've never done before. Again, I think these came out great and I learned so much painting them. Each squad is slightly unique though. You'll notice those guys had the epaulets on its hips and jetpacks were yellow. These ones are red, and the next one should be white. Wolf Guard leaders have this Space Wolves contrast on theirs. The reason for this being is I like to be able to visually identify which squad's which on the battlefield, especially if they've got different loadouts or are a little bit close together. I just think it creates a nice little thematic reason for me to give a different color tone to another squad. So that's why that is done like that, and it just makes playing really, really easy. This set here is a set of Assault Intercessors I went out of my way to kit bash to make them look more wolfy. These are guys who crossed the Rubicon, so they still have a lot of their attachment to their talismans or their double-bladed chain axes or the bayonet stabby things on the end of their rifles, which totally are not Kroot barrel extensions. Don't tell the Inquisition. Finally, we have, for basic troops, I guess, we have my Hounds of Morkai. I have a video on this channel going over how I painted these. This was primarily airbrush and dry brush. I love this scheme. I painted these guys specifically to try to ape the vibe of Heresy era wolf armor. And the guy with the orange hair there, I sculpted that hair onto a bald, mask for the Hounds to make him look like the character Tajark or whatever in Tacticus, the 40k game on mobile. So he was inspired by that, which is why he's got some hair and some sculpted fur on him. Here's my Blade Guard. You might notice, a lieutenant, but these are my Blade Guard, all 6 of them. I use these guys pretty much all the time in my list because they're fantastic in Space Wolves lists, especially when you've attached Ragnar Blackmane to them. I believe you can also take an Ancient as well, which is also dirty, but it's been a couple weeks since I've played the Wolves. I've played Votan mainly the last couple weeks, so I might be rusty on my rules there. But again, great miniatures, great sculpts, fun to paint. I love these. As mentioned earlier, I printed off some Terminators. These are from Atlan Forge's Asgardian lineup. As you can see, some of them are on the wrong side base. I got halfway through transitioning them over and then I just stopped. Yeah, I gotta fix that still, that's on me. But otherwise, I think these are great sculpts. I do want to get some official Assault Terminators in my list at some point once GW releases them, but in between now and then, these stand-ins are great. I am a big fan of 3D printing in general. The Atlan Forge minis can be rather complex or busy as far as like painting goes, but they do look really cool on the battlefield. We got the Eradicator squad. This squad, I think, is... Oh, I don't know if this is from the Imperium magazine or from the Indomitus box set. But either way, these guys are all painted up. These are the very first couple of Marines I painted. These guys and the Aggressors. I painted one Outrider bike beforehand. But basically, these are very early on. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I thought, well, these guys kind of are like the Fire Bats. They're not. These are Meltas, not whatever. Anyways, so I painted the extra up armored part of their Gravis plate on both the jetpack and their legs red to give them like, oh, you know, they look a little bit different. But it just kind of makes it look a little bit. I'm reminded of McDonald's if they gone blue, so I don't like it. But, you know, you live and you learn. Here's my first ever set of Aggressors and my only ever set of Aggressors. You can see one of these guys doesn't look like the other two. I didn't know what streaking grime was at the time, and I was less inclined to Google and learn from YouTube tutorials because I had all this plastic I just wanted to sit down and paint. But I had seen on Reddit and Instagram various minis that had got all dark and oily, so I tried to do the same effect with a Nuln Oil wash, and it looked like shit. So I never repeated it across my army. But, you know, I can't fix him outside of repainting him, and I'm not doing that. First up is my first set of 2 Outriders. What you're looking at here is the last 2 of the 3 Outriders I painted. This was before I got an airbrush, so you can see some brush marks as I'm trying to figure out how to properly thin paint for large panels. Otherwise, great kit. I loved painting these. These were a blast to put together, even in their push fit setup. Getting the gap in the middle to not be so big was hard and annoying, but otherwise, great kit. I learned a lot about washes. I used the washes specifically to create the effect of like metal burn in on the exhaust there, and I think it looks really, really good. As well as you can see here, we have the first ever Space Marine I painted since getting back into the hobby, which is that Outrider there. You can tell he doesn't have the white arms or the white head or any white on the mini because I hadn't really figured out what I wanted to do with the wolves yet. I just wanted to paint one. And the other is the first of my Thunderwolf cavalry. The bases I do for all my Space Wolves are very basic. I use Martian Iron Earth. I paint them with like a really kind of bright blue. I give them a Space Wolves contrast or a Griff Charger gray contrast wash, if you will. You just basically put it over. Once it's dried, dry brush a couple times with a few tones of white to get a ice effect, and you can put your mini on it. I also use Valhalla Blizzard to give some snow effects to the base, so it's not just ice. But again, more Thunderwolf cavalry. These are again by Atlan Forge. I use them as stand-ins for, these are Thunder Bears. I use them as stand-ins for Thunderwolves because the current Thunderwolf kit is A, not Primaris, B, old, and C, overpriced for its age and it being an old Marine. And I'm going to spill a hot take here. I don't care for old Marines. I have some. I had a box of Space Wolves from back in the day, but I never cared about Marines until I saw them Primaris, if I'm 100% honest with you. I was always a Xenos player first, and Primaris made me fall in love with Space Marines, and I will take that hot take to the goddamn grave. Moving on to the walking caskets here, we have my slightly kit-bashed Redemptor Dreadnought. I used some bits out of the Venerable Dreadnought kit, and a little bit of green stuff to add some Space Wolves flair to this. You can see the fell claw hanging down from the chest piece there. I've got the Space Wolves kind of like hip pieces and then spikes and fur pelts everywhere. So this is mostly bits from the Venerable Dreadnought kit, but I did do some sculpting on the fur for that shoulder pad there. I have 2 more Dreadnoughts I still need to build, but they're probably going to go into my Ultramarines list. I have a Ballistus and a Redemptor. I'm thinking I'm going to put the Redemptor in the Ultramarines list and save the Ballistus for a future Imperial Fists army. I basically am planning on painting a 2,000 point list of Marines every edition in a different chapter, doing it so that each one has their Primarch. So Ultramarines first, because I have Gilliman, and then it'll be Dark Angels next, unless another Primarch that isn't Leman Russ comes out. Because I need Leman Russ for my Space Wolves army. As you can see here, I have a Venerable Dreadnought that is not magnetized, so cannot act as Murderfang or Bjorn when I need him to. But it's a standard Venerable Dreadnought. It has a great loadout. This was a blast to paint. I don't normally like old Marine stuff, but I needed to have a classic Dreadnought in my army. They still look cool. They look derpy. They look cool. They fit the aesthetic. And I think it's important for a Primaris chapter to have at least 1 or 2 old Marines in it for the sake of, at least with Space Wolves, because it fits the theme of like them needing to learn how to be wolfy. So as kits get more and more, customized for the chapter, those Marines will get all their special fancy runes and stuff, but the basic Primaris won't. They're always going to be kind of out of place, so I feel like having an old Marine there to teach the new bloods the way is just nice and thematic. But moving on to the repulsor here, I didn't have an airbrush at this time. This entire thing is brushed. I fucking hated my life. I bought an airbrush about a year later after this and painted up several tanks and knights since then. This took so long to do by brush, but I am so pleased with it. It's a gorgeous tank. I've painted the interior, which will not be seen here. It has magnetized weapons, the doors come off. This is just a good kit with a lot of good details. I enjoyed painting it, and I want more hover tanks. I want more hover tank variety. I want as many hover tanks in the Primaris line as we had Land Raider based vehicles. Here's, again, my couple of old Marines that I painted up. These were kind of the first test pieces when I wanted to paint some plastic that I had lying around but didn't want to put it onto a model. And the other one is, I just had some fun painting and digibashing a Space Marine intercessor, just like a typical intercessor. I was going to do a whole squad of them, and then I realized I don't care enough to build a bunch of intercessors for my Space Wolves. I have enough shooting units if I wanted them, and I have enough units to get my guys up the board. I don't need a squad of dedicated intercessors, especially when I have this big ass boy. This is a massive hunk of unbalanced resin. It's a printed knight I got off of the purple site. It has, full magnetization, so the stubber and the tilt shield, the AA gun on its back. I don't know, is that an autocannon? I think the autocannon's thing is what. See, I don't know the loadouts for knights that well. I'm pretty sure this is an autocannon chain sword loadout with an AA gun on the top, but whatever. As you can see, my manipulation of the knight, I took the head off because it's magnetized, but the shoulder pad also fell off. It's not magnetized. I just need to re-glue it on. This guy has taken a couple of tumbles. He is very off-centered. A good lesson, a very good lesson to learn, to balance your minis and maybe even pin them if they're resin, but we'll see if I actually take that to heart. I used the airbrush for most of this, so you see the gradients of the yellow from the Baylor brown to the Flash Gits yellow there is created using an airbrush. Same with the Space Wolves blue all over the miniature. These is also airbrushed. Fully magnetized, as I said. This was definitely designed to be like a speed paint for me. I didn't want to spend too much time on it. I think it looks great, but it does not look as good as my Ultramarine Knight, which, again, non-magnetized shoulder pad, but it is off. As you can see here, I have a red and a blue gradient going. I did some stencil work, some freehand. There are some decals here. Some cataphracti style shoulders, which I think make ultramarine stuff look so good. Yeah, Volkite gun, I believe this is. I use it as I think just a generic plasma weapon if I need to. But as you can see here, I got some freehand done on the panels down below. More stencil work there. This was just a fun paint. Onto another ultramarine vehicle really quickly here. This is still a work in progress, but I've had like my test video on the channel was this tank. I need to finish off, this side and then the door so I can close the cabin up. I have a base already painted for it, so the base I'm not worried about. But yeah, this guy is nearly done. I'm really enjoying it. It's a hunk of resin. It's good 3 to 4 pounds. We have my Infernus Marine here. You saw him last week, or if you didn't see him last week, the video should be somewhere here. Again, this is my first of the Infernus Marines, first Marine painted out of the new box set, the new Leviathan box set. I'm a big fan of these miniatures. It sucks that we only got 5 poses and 10 of them, but I'm gonna have 2 squads of 5 anyways, so it won't matter as much. But yeah, these are great sculpts. These are fun to build and paint, and this guy looks fantastic. But these guys here, these Ultramarines, are meant to try to take a lot of my skill set that I know now, so I don't have to work as hard as I did when I painted my Space Wolves army. These 3 eliminators, I used different techniques to try to figure out how I was going to paint the army. One of these was your traditional slap chop, so black, dry brush a bunch of grays, stick your contrast over it. The other was just something where I painted it a dark blue and then dry brushed up several different lighter blues to get to where I wanted. And then the third was a combination of both. I dry brushed all my blues and then I did a contrast over top of it. They all looked great. Ultimately, the Infernus Marine video is the process I'm going for the bulk of my Ultramarines, because I don't want to be spending 2.5, 3 years to get 2,000 points out, like I did with my Space Wolves. The ghillie was also very easy. I just used some glue and a grass applicator and some static grass, and voila, you got a cape full of grass. Well, that was the army and the list I have for both my Space Wolves and Ultramarines so far. Obviously, I will be painting more Marines on this channel, starting with the Ultramarines, and I'm really excited to get together a full 2,000 point army entirely on this channel. It will be interesting to see how both my content and my painting develops over that time. Again, thank you for nearly 25 minutes of your time here. I'm going to let you go. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll be back in the next few weeks here with another video. I think I'm doing Eldar next, but I might also do terrain. Let me know in the comments if you have a preference there. Anyways, peace.